showtime.
The Whitecloaks in right?
Season 2 starts out with what I assume is supposed to be the prologue of the Great Hunt, except instead of over 100 Dark Friends cowering in fear of one of the Forsaken, we have 13 members of what I assume to be the World Economic Forum based on the touching of children, the general aura of evil bitchiness, and the Star of David-shaped building.
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
For some reason, the Tinkerwoman brought her daughter to work, continuing the show's weird obsession with putting children in places they shouldn't be.
That's just bad parenting right there.
We overhear that Ashamael is letting these chucklefucks know that Randall Thor is running around in the world and he wants to turn Rand to his cause. He then picks the little girl up, whines about being a victim, and then takes her out on the lot to show her a certified pre-owned Subaru Outback. The first real scene starts out with Moraine, who is now depowered and consequently training to defeat the invading Hun army. She's training like this to fill water for her bathtub so that the show can ham-fistedly juxtapose Season 1's bathtub scene with this one and make us feel bad for Moraine. And it might have even worked, except that we're 10 minutes of screen time away from her snitching my boy Meth Cawthon out to the Red Aja. So, you know.
Fuck that bitch, slap that hoe, fuck that bitch.
Lan practices his sword shirtless for a while discussing Moraine having a bunch of mysterious visitors. I have to take the L on this one. I incorrectly assumed that this woman here was one of the mental patient women in the Kyrian asylum based on her, everything. Then Lan decides to act as Moraine's secretary and inform her that her 10:30 appointment has arrived. In the first of many scenes in which Moraine acts like a miserable to Lan, she dismisses him and refuses to bring him into her plans. I know that this is her attempting to chase him away because she's lost all her confidence and doesn't feel like she's deserving of his loyalty and blah 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 blah, but Hollywood, I need you to listen to me. Stop doing this shit. A woman being a because she's insecure doesn't make me like the character or sympathize with her or even give her a partial pass. It makes me hate her because she's being a bitch and makes me hate the show because it has clearly broken morality in which women are given a pass for being unpleasant bitches so long as their feelings are hurt. That's not how the world works. Women, especially strong women, are empowered adults who are expected to be in control of their emotions and not lash out like a child when they're hurt. Bail Doman shows up so that the show can say that Bail Doman showed up, and dumbass show fans can clap about finding an Easter egg that is literally the size of this man. We then cut to Egwene doing chores around the White Tower. Alana gets double penetrated. Yes, it is that quick, that random, and that unnecessary. And then Egwene brings the refuse bucket down to the kitchen and we get another of the leaked scenes. Nynaeve and Egwene are working in the kitchens at the White Tower when Alana walks in. That was quick. Something seems to be missing about Alana from Season 1. And of course I'm talking about her not acknowledging that Egwene is quite literally Jesus Christ and Nynaeve is her Lazarus called back from the dead. Alana asks Blondie here to name the 5 components of the One Power and she struggles to name them all, which confirms my working theory that most Aes Sedai have an IQ roughly equivalent to her shoe size. Alana then pulls out the visual representation of the show and says that all trainees will have to drink it if they can't filter the water. Egwene has a Kenny Powers moment when Alana asks why she isn't using proper hand placement.
You know what Kenny Powers says? Fundamentals are the crutch for the talentless.
And Nynaeve decides to drink raw sewage rather than work on the lesson. I am genuinely asking, are we supposed to like these people? My god, what a miserable bunch of bitches. Women talk for a while, and at the end of a 2-minute scene, Liandrin is given permission to talk to Nynaeve, which is something she did several times in Season 1, so I'm not sure why she needed permission. I'll admit I was a little distracted in this scene by Caillou and Drag, so maybe something more important happened here, but this is where I realized that we're at the 20-minute mark of the episode and none of the Edmundsfield 3 had shown up yet. We then get to Perrin, who is writing a letter. I guess he's going to drop it off at the nearest town with a messenger, but I don't think anybody actually thought through the logistics of communicating long distances without text messaging. Minimally, the timelines are all wonky in this show. Loyal shows up, which I have to say is a little jarring, considering the last time we saw him, Fane had just stabbed him in the heart with the Valdara dagger. Midget Uno is also apparently alive after being executed by a Fade. Also, did they switch actors for Ingtar? I thought this guy was Ingtar, and he also got executed by a Fade. We hear that Agelmar bought a new sniffer, and last I checked, Lord Agelmar took a Trolloc spear to the chest so hard it impaled him on the wall.
Mortal fatality.
This show just retconned significant parts of its last episode. Clunky dialogue ensues, and we meet Elias, who seems to have not the faintest idea what people act like. We then get to see Perrin's first ability to use his wolf powers, which was so bad it made me bust out laughing. The show appears to be portraying his ability to smell by just showing flashbacks of the events that happened, and yes, it's as dumb as it sounds.
That's not how the Force works.
Lan and Tomas talk about their feelings. You'll never guess, but Lan is sad. Nynaeve is having a 2v1 warder fight with swords. She's apparently been training with swords a lot. I swear to Christ, if this is the replacement for Matt's fight scene with Gawain and Galad, I'm gonna flip shit. We've now crossed the 31-minute mark of this episode, and we have yet to see Rand or Matt. Alana then tells Egwene about the secrets of being double penetrated. I am not joking. Leandrin and Nynaeve then have a scene not unlike that of Siwan and Nynaeve on the ship back to Tarvalon in the Great Hunt, only the tone is entirely different, so rather than it coming off as a teaching moment, it just kind of comes off as weird and abusive. And considering we've now had threats to make novices drink shit water, several instances of Alana's sexual misconduct, and now this actual physical abuse, I kind of am curious as to why the show seems to be going out of its way to portray the White Tower as cartoonishly abusive, but doesn't seem to be aware that's what it's doing. We then have even more shallow graves, to which I just want to ask, why are you like this show? Perrin's violent monster speech goes by like a fart. To everybody in Hollywood, please stop having your characters say,
"There's a tempest in me."
Shut up, bitch!
It looks cringy to have some mid-20s child who has never been in a fight in his life talking about the rage that fills him. The last time we saw Perrin, he was very conspicuously doing fuck all, as Faldara was under attack and Padden Fane walked out with the Shatter Logoth dagger. His words don't match at all with his actions. Also, fuck you, show, for this "maybe Fane had a reason" line. This isn't good foreshadowing. Had you just left it at Ingtar ordering the bodies buried, it still would have been cringe that we're honoring Traitor as dead rather than pursuing the Horn of Valir, but at least it would have been subtle. Good grief. Moraine is doing the Hank spiral from Breaking Bad.
You ordering a new rock?
I'm bidding on a new mineral.
She's a bitch to Lan, then Lan stands up for himself? I could almost cut through the cringe of Moraine trying to drive Lan away from her by being a bitch, because Lan finally stood up for himself. But in the next season with Lan, everybody at the table nags him until he relents and brings Moraine her dinner like the lapdog puppy bitch he is. A letter comes from Perrin to the White Tower about how all of them are such amazing friends, and I kind of want to ask, where and when? Perrin and Nynaeve had exactly 2 conversations in the first season, and both of them were nagging at him for being too simpy towards Egwene. The last conversation Perrin and Egwene had, she was telling him she was interested in another dude and not him, and most of their conversations featured Perrin simping. Actually, now that I think about it, most of Rand and Egwene's conversations were also Rand simping for Egwene. I'm observing there's a lot of simping for Egwene in this show. At the 46-minute mark, we finally see Matt, who is still wearing his stupid-ass bathrobe. Leandrin outs herself as Black Aja by lying to Matt about the contents of Perrin's letter while she mocks him as he lays despondently on the ground. No shot has ever so perfectly captured the spirit of a show. Leandrin, who has been elevated to a main character, sits on her chair cruelly belittling the actual main male character while he lays there despondently unworthy of even looking at her and lets her rain down abuse at him while he cries. Fuck you, Rafe Judkins. Perrin sends his stupid lantern out. Egwene cries about missing Rand, which, girl, same. We're 46 minutes into this episode and nobody has even seen the main character. Matt stands up and starts getting his Shawshank Redemption on. We see Rand for literally 18 seconds. He says no words and the sum total of his achievements are hanging up a lantern. Fuck you, show. Lan eventually remembers what show he's in and realizes that his goal in this show is to be berated by old women, so he finally is berated to the point that he brings Moraine her dinner like the baby bag bitch that he is. Moraine saddles her horse and rides out towards the rest of this episode's plot. Within 10 seconds of doing so, she is immediately ambushed by a Fade. She then plays hide-and-seek with it in the dark for over a minute. Let me say that again, for those of you who don't believe me. Moraine Sedai hides in a dark graveyard from the kind of shadow spawn who has the powers to literally step in and out of shadows. Clearly Fades have problems seeing her in the dark on account of their lack of eyes.
You were literally too stupid to insult.
Moraine Sedai then gets the jump on a Fade in the dark and stabs it through the lower jaw. The Fade then falls down and dies from a wound that literally would not have killed a regularly human being. There are no vital organs in your lower jaw. What is happening here? A second Fade then sneaks up on her and decides to give her a shallow wound to the gut so as to avoid killing her, because that would be rude. But then Lan Arya Starks out of nowhere with some truly elite wire work. Well done, guys. Lan then gets cut by a Thrakandar blade, and nobody thinks this is a problem. The Trolloc that cut Tam in the Two Rivers was apparently the only shadow spawn in the world that has a blade with any kind of malignant effect. Outstanding work. This ass of a fight continues, with the Fade seemingly only trying to leave small wounds on Lan rather than actually killing him. And then we have an absolutely legendarily bad flippy kick, while the Fade seems to...
He starts monologuing.
We then get a fake out of Moraine being able to channel again, as Perrin comes from the top of the cliffs. We have the third instance in this fight of a person popping out of the darkness to ambush a Fade, as Tomas kills the last one because Perrin used the one power to give him a flaming sword. Moraine and then bitch at each other, and we fade to black, because that's the exact note that this episode deserved to end on. I am physically incapable of adequately emphasizing how bad this episode of television is. As an adaptation, it is not even close, and even worse, it's not even trying to be close. This flat out isn't The Great Hunt, and it's not The Dragon Reborn either. The show clearly doesn't even have the slightest interest in telling the story of Mat, Rand, and Perrin. Rand is in the episode for a grand total of 18 seconds, and were it not for a union contract that stipulates as a listed main character he must be in every episode, he wouldn't have been in it at all. I would say that this show is a feminist retelling of The Wheel of Time, but even that isn't sufficient to emphasize the level of destruction done to this story. It would be more accurate to say that this is a feminist retelling of a feminist alternative universe fan fiction of The Wheel of Time. For those of you smart enough or principled enough to not hate watch this show, imagine if somebody made entire episodes out of the worthless Stefan side plot. It is that bad. As a television show independent of an adaptation, Christ alive, this is boring as shit. I remember when the first season came out, reading how it was unfair to expect the showrunners to be able to tell this story in the limited time frame, and that if only they had longer episodes, things would be better.
So that was a fucking lie.
There is so much feelings in hallways that it's hard to adequately describe. For 90% of the episode, this show bears a striking resemblance to Downton Abbey in appearance, not quality of dialogue or story. And in the other 10%, you are treated to genuinely some of the worst choreographed, directed, and executed fight scenes I've ever seen on a big-budget production. Lan's flippy kick was the most laughable attempt at stage combat I've seen since Galadriel teabagged the Númenórean recruits in Rings of Power. If the offensively intrusive identity politics, awful pacing, and terrible writing doesn't bore you to tears and shatter your immersion, the pathetic sequences this show calls action set pieces certainly will. Fuck this show. I'll see you in a few hours for episode 2.